Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Brittnee. In today's video, I am going to show you how to create a ring or circle chocolate bonbon design. I came up with this idea because the Olympics are coming up. I'm so excited to watch, especially the women's gymnastics. Let me know down below if you guys are excited to watch the Olympics as well and what your favorite summer Olympic sport is. Since the Olympics have been on my brain for a couple of weeks now, I figured I'd make a themed bonbon that allows me to show this cool ring technique. So this is not a technique I came up with myself. It's something that I've seen on Instagram by Andrei Dubovic. I hope that I said his name right. He is an amazing chocolatier that has been coming up with ways to use this technique with all sorts of really intricate chocolate designs for bonbons. In a future video, I really want to test out a product that he's just released, which is kind of like a backwards stamp, because you're not taking cocoa butter and stamping it into the mold. Instead, you're heating up the stamp and melting cocoa butter off of the mold. It's really cool. Anyway, today's technique is basically the same as that, but instead of using a stamp, we'll be using piping tips. And a round piping tip will create our perfect ring design. I'm so excited because this technique is just perfect to create the Olympic rings. You guys know me though, I can't just stick to one idea because I haven't seen them yet. I need to try multiple variations, and then at the end, we'll see which one we like the best to represent the Olympics. Okay, let's get started. Here are the supplies that you'll need. A handful of different cocoa butter colors, including white, black, blue, red, green, yellow, and gold. I'll link the specifics in the description. A half sphere polycarbonate mold, a flat square polycarbonate mold, some round piping tips. I'll specify the sizes down below. Whatever sponge brushes you have, but I found round works best for these designs. A fine mini paintbrush, some edible gold luster dust, a toothbrush, and some lemon extract. I'll be using an airbrush for the background today, but instead you can use a large soft round brush if you want, a heat gun, and all of your other basic chocolate supplies like parchment paper, paper towels, gloves, and scrapers. First thing that I do is polish my polycarbonate molds. The round one is already clean and I didn't really see much going on, but I haven't used it in a while, so I wanted to make sure it's nice and shiny. I'm using food grade ethanol and cotton balls to polish it. And the same thing with the square mold, but it's a bit more of a pain because there's a tiny bit of cocoa butter stuck in some of the corners. Using the ethanol with Q-tips works great to get that off. If you can get the precision Q-tips that are pointy on each end, they work even better for molds with corners. I'll link those in the description. So here is my general plan. I'm going to make some round and some square bonbons, each with both black and white backgrounds. For the round bonbons, I'll do large single colored rings, some with speckles and some not, and then I'll try to do the full Olympic ring logo on the round and square bonbons, some in color and some in gold, and then I want to play around with some larger, more abstract ways to represent the colorful rings for a less obvious, more unique look. Plus, it's just fun to play with some ring designs that could be made in other colors for a different occasion. To experiment with some colorful and metallic splatter on some of the designs, I'm just using regular paper to block off any cavities I want to stay clean. To do the splatter, I just dip a toothbrush in the cocoa butter. If I think I got a little too much, I dab some off on a paper towel, and then I just use my thumb and the bristles of the toothbrush to flick onto the mold. I wanted to experiment with having some splatter just match the color of the ring and some splatter be multicolored with all the colors on one bonbon, so you'll see me do both here. Also, as a funny little side note, it really satisfied me that I had 4 toothbrushes and the 4 colors matched my cocoa butters exactly. Remember to clean the surface of your mold off by wiping it on a clean paper towel every so often. So for the gold splatter, I'm using edible dazzle dust and lemon extract to mix it into a paint. You can also use gold cocoa butter instead, but I didn't want to temper it twice, so I'm just using this. Now, something to keep in mind though is that if you use luster dust for the splatter, you have to airbrush the background, because if you try to paint on the background with a brush, it will just spread the dry luster dust off. You might see cool streaks, but you won't see splatters. So if you don't have an airbrush and want to do splatter, use gold cocoa butter for the splatters. That way they won't move when you paint the background on. I wasn't planning on doing silver, but then decided on a whim to also do silver rings to see if they look cool against the black. So here I'm just using silver dazzle dust to do the same thing as I did with the gold. Next, I spray the white background onto the square mold. I'm only doing some of the cavities white and the rest will be black on this mold. Now I spray the white background onto my round mold. And my airbrush settings for all of the backgrounds I sprayed were 80 psi, max airflow, and low to medium paint flow. Then I just do a second coat on each of the molds before I clean my airbrush and move on to black. The square mold is kind of tricky to airbrush. You'll want to spray directly into each corner and then along each edge, and then straight into the bottom in order to get the full cavity coated. Again, I give both molds 2 coats and then I spot check as well, just in case I think I missed any spots. For the first ring, I'm using this Attico number 840 star tip, but I'm using the round side, obviously. And what you do is quickly warm up the metal with a heat gun for seriously just like 3 seconds. And then you stamp it into your cocoa butter where you want your ring to melt away some of the cocoa butter. I wanted my rings a little thicker than the piping tip, so I just carefully swirled the circle around. To remove the melted cocoa butter, spin a sponge brush into the cavity until it's clean, and now you have a negative circle in your background. So that's the technique. As you can see, it's really pretty simple, but it's super cool because you can do a lot with it. Next, you'll see me continue with this technique using the large circle, and then I'll start testing out smaller circles and the other designs. You can see here that I grab a different shape sponge and it doesn't work quite as well as the round one. The round one works especially good because it's about the same size as the melted circle, so the corners really do a good job getting into the mold and wiping the circle clean. Here I'm doing our first abstract Olympic ring design using the same size circle as the others so far. The next size tip that I'm using is Attico number 802 round. Again, I just heat it for about 3 seconds or less before I stamp it into the cocoa butter. So here I test out the full Olympic ring design. The spacing was a bit tricky, but figuring out the angle to press the small circle into the mold without slipping was the hardest part for sure. In the end, it looks pretty good though. Next, I'll use this Attico number 807 round tip to test out another Olympic ring variation design, the one where they all connect in a circular pattern in the center of the bonbon. Olympic rings or not, I love this design. I think it would look good in any color. And for the last ring variation, I grabbed the first star tip again and used the large circle. This time I do 5 circles stacked along one edge of the mold. Now for the smallest circle of all, this is a Wilton size 10 round tip. Going into this one, I knew it would be hard and may or may not work and come out clean because it's so small. Creating the circles wasn't too bad because the flat surface of the square mold made it easy to aim the piping tip. The 2 outer circles were a little hard though because the angled edge of the tip would touch the side edge of the mold and melt off some cocoa butter sometimes if I wasn't really careful. But the hardest part about the full logo on these small cubes are the last 2 bottom rings. Because there's only a small amount of cocoa butter left in between where the rings connect, if things get too warm, those little bits would sometimes wipe away with the circles and basically ruin the whole design. You'll see an example of that right here. To prevent that from happening, I started stamping the first 3 rings and then popping the mold just into my wine cooler to keep things chilled, and then I would pull it out and do the bottom 2 circles last. That way the cocoa butter stayed cool enough against the warmth of the circles and stayed stuck to the mold when I wiped off the melted cocoa butter with a sponge brush. Last, I finished off all the designs on the round mold with a black background. I did some more of the full ring logo and then filled in all the rest with the more abstract ring designs and had fun playing around with a couple new ones too. Next, I temper my gold luster dust using only my heat gun, because remember, some luster dusts shouldn't be microwaved. And then the next step to the technique is just to fill in all of the negative rings we now have in the cocoa butter backgrounds. At first I used the big round brush, but decided it was kind of a waste of cocoa butter and I didn't want things to get too thick. So I switched over to a fine brush on my next mold so I could focus on just filling in the designs. I made silver cocoa butter using white cocoa butter and silver dazzle dust. Sadly, silver just never pops the same as gold does, so before I applied the cocoa butter, I dusted on some luster dust to see if I could add a bit more shimmer to the surface. Not sure it did much, but oh well. Last, I filled in all the colored rings. So I tempered each color one by one and carefully painted on the rings. So go ahead and enjoy watching the sped up version. I had a ton of fun experimenting with these Olympic-themed bonbons. Of course, some of the designs would be much more realistic than others to make if I had to make a bunch for an event or something, because you can see filling in each color is pretty tedious and time-consuming. I enjoy it when it is experimenting and just having fun, but making a lot of these for a job could get pretty frustrating. Now, if you did want to do a single or multiple ring design, you could make things more efficient by keeping the design all one color, and the quickest way to fill it in would be using an airbrush. So say I did want to do the Olympic ring logo, I could incorporate the colors in the splatter and then just spray the full ring design black. Or maybe I could do a full tray of bonbons for each of the colors of the rings and then a black ring on the bonbon. So there are definitely ways to still make the process a bit quicker. But today's video is all about experimenting, so I don't mind the process. All right, I shelled, filled, and capped these bonbons off camera just so I could get them out of the mold to show you guys the final designs, and now it's time to unmold them. Also really quick, this is a perfect time to show you guys another example of when you accidentally give a little too much heat to your mold before capping. It's what I was telling you about in my last video. I was so annoyed when I saw that I did this. Do you see the thin bits of milk chocolate around the bottom edge of the bonbons? I think what I did was accidentally hold the gun just a tiny bit too close to my mold. I'm going to show you close-ups of all the designs so you see what all the experiments turned out like. I'm starting with my least favorite ones. Okay, so on these ones I went way too crazy with the splatter and the design just isn't clear enough. Plus, remember, some of the mini rings just didn't turn out because they are honestly so fragile to get to succeed every time. These ones turned out pretty cute, I think. Honestly, the black squares and silver and gold rings look pretty good, I think. Just kind of impractical to make too many of them because they're so difficult to get right. These splattered ones are better than the other ones. A bit less splatter and with cleaner designs. I really love this stacked ring design. I also love how this centered overlapping ring design came out. And these Olympic rings turned out good. Really, the silver rings just came out pretty much white, which is fine. Still cute, but I like the sparkly gold better. These are my favorite of the more abstract ring experimental designs. I think they're really pretty, and I'll probably use this technique again with other colors because I think that they're really interesting bonbon designs. Here are the large Olympic rings with the plain white background. Turned out nice and clean. I think these ones with the matching single color splatter are my favorite of the large single ring design. And here's the multicolor splatter design. They aren't my favorite because they look a bit too messy and are giving Mega Bruiser Jawbreaker. If you know what I'm talking about, please comment down below. I swear I had one of those that I worked on for a year as a kid, and it would just sit on the edge of my shelf in my bedroom, and every so often I would lick it. Okay, honestly, I love these abstract Olympic ring designs so much. This one with the connected rings is definitely one of my favorites out of all the bonbons, along with this one with the stacked colored rings. And then here are a couple more successful Olympic ring logos that turned out cute, and I even like the Jawbreaker one. All right, everyone, that is how you create clean and crisp, perfectly round rings or circles on your chocolate bonbons. I hope that you enjoyed the video and that you learned something new. If you did, please leave a like down below. It helps me out a lot. Also comment down below, which Olympic ring design do you like the best? If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, today's the day. If you'd like to see something else that's sweet, just click on one of these thumbnails. Thanks so much for watching today, and I'll see you soon. Bye!